Hello YouTube, back with another build guide, and this will actually be two builds, sort of a conclusion until major changes are made to Excalibur, of the two builds, two fundamental builds that you can run. And the easiest way to define these is this Gas Afflictions build if you're primarily wanting to run primaries and secondaries or just an equipped melee, something like Dual Ichors, then this is just a better build. This is probably the best Excalibur build in the game overall that isn't just maximizing on the fact that when you run Chromatic Blade and melee influence with electric only on Excalibur, you just nuke the whole map. So I'll get into the specific advantages of this setup. The advantage of running these two as variations, where I just have different loadouts between them, is you don't have to change emissive colors and you don't have to change Archon Shards. So these Archon Shards stay the same. These are maximally designed around both of these builds. There's convenience within that, but then also just I'll discuss why when we get into the Gas Afflictions build. To note here, using one of these Violet Shards as one of the orb versions it's really good. If you don't have this on your kit at any point, you don't get this feature. So just having one of these is very noticeable with and even your health regeneration. And then you only want to run one Tau casting speed shard. If you run two casting speed shards, you run into this weird issue where slash dash it completely eliminates the momentum, and you actually get far less distance when you're using it as a mobility ability. So I just don't think it's worth it. There's a sweet spot here. And to go over my previous build that I was running, where I was running Affliction with gas, similar-ish setup to this, so we'll get into this build. So where I was running Impetus on that previous build, there was a core issue when it came to energy economy that you were too efficient, and it was something I suspected might be an issue. Damage-wise, that gas or that one was blast with Affliction. Damage-wise, it was absurd. Even with the bugginess of the way blast interacts with Affliction, where sometimes you'd see like it only do 1 damage. This build corrects away from that by using gas instead, but the advantage that this variation of that build provides is that you're not nuking your energy consumption and therefore your shield regeneration to the point where you have survivability issues. To give some background on that, I even tried tolerating how running 2 casting speed shards breaks slash dash in order to fix that, and it just wasn't worth it. Where the problem you were running into is that the consumption of energy from Radio Javelin was low enough because your build was so efficient, running high stacks of Impetus without running Blind Rage, that you wouldn't have enough shields to survive through the cast time of Radio Javelin. So that was the core part of the problem. You'd cast Radio Javelin, and before you finish casting that ability, you would lose all your shields and then take damage against, let's say, level cap enemies. So this build corrects around that core fundamental issue while also just giving it an insane amount of damage. Notice here, 276% strength without having Impetus stacked or having multi-augmented stack. So this build sits comfortably at 380 to like 420, depending on Impetus stacks, amount of strength. So you're talking about 400% strength, which is just absurd. And that's very noticeable on Slash Dash because of the way that scales the base damage of Exalted Blade. It also does impact the max amount of damage you can get from Radio Javelin while also affecting Nourish. Most people are well aware of how well strength scales with Nourish. So the red pill that I had to swallow that I didn't like, but it's the reality of it. If you're running, let's say, this build primarily using Exalted Blade for slash dashing and you're trying to maximize Dual Ichor. Dual Ichor does not scale off Wrathful Advance. And because it doesn't scale off Wrathful Advance, at least the clouds don't. And the clouds being such an important part of Dual Ichor when you're running, let's say, a Vortex build, those clouds being so important and so powerful that they're worth building around. And Nourish is the best way to maximize their damage, and that's because of viral damage, but then also just the raw damage that's added to it. running super high strength as well. Radial Javelin and Furious Javelin stacks scale those clouds extremely well to the point where those clouds are hitting in the millions sometimes. Like you'll see in regular missions them procking in the hundreds of thousands and as high as in the millions. It's kind of ridiculous. But there's a few main advantages of running Nourish in this setup. So because we don't have any true form of energy regeneration outside of Archon Stretch stacking, uh, this fixes the energy economy issue that this build would otherwise have. When you throw Blind Rage on, even if let's say we got rid of Molt Augmented, you're either without blind with Blind Rage on, you can't even compensate with like Arcane Energy or Arcane Energize. So if let's say I got rid of Molt Augmented and I was relying on some efficiency from this, and then uh, the burden of the minus 55 efficiency on from Blind Rage, Archon or the Arcane Energize is simply not enough. It's something I tested heavily, and then you also run into the limitation where like, okay, so you're doing that in order to maintain Wrathful Advance, but how much does Wrathful Advance actually buff Slash Dash and buff Dual Ichor? Really not that much. So that's where Nourish just comes in. It solves that problem while also providing a kind of convenient feature. So the about 1 second pulse that occurs that provides viral stacks nearby enemies. In this case, it's a 17-meter range. This does help maintain Arcane Impetus stacks. So let's say for 20 seconds you don't Slash Dash, you don't Radial Javelin, and uh, those stacks just decay away. If you're in melee combat, just smacking away with your melee weapon, or let's say you're shooting targets within 17-meter range, that pulse will refresh the stacks of Arcane Impetus. So there's a feature built within that. And then obviously the other one is the viral damage. The viral damage increase, greater than 124% once you're fully ramped, it's so noticeable on Dual Ichor and the way it buffs the damage of the clouds that it's it solves multiple problems. This isn't I'm going to throw Nourish on the build because Nourish is one of the best subsumes in the game. This is like solving multiple problems with the way that Arcane Impetus works, with the way that Afflictions works, with the way that the Dual Ichor Clouds work, where it simply does slot into being the best option for this setup. To go into the actual Exalted Blade build, this one gets complicated. So because we're not running Wrathful Advance, because we have a lot of crit damage from Archon Shards, you want more crit chance. And the way the math works for this, so because of the way combo works for Slash Dash, you really want to have Galvanized Reflex on Exalted Blade by default if you ever are using just Slash Dash alone. So this right here is there almost exclusively because of the way Slash Dash combo works. And to sort of briefly discuss that, Slash Dash doesn't have its own combo counter. It only gets a combo counter when you pull out Exalted Blade, and then it has its own combo counter that it's using Exalted Blade's active combo counter for. If you don't have Exalted Blade out, it only can benefit from initial combo in order to stack things like Blood Rush and Gladiator mods, Weeping Wounds, all that stuff. But, and this is something I've tested heavily, let's say you're at full combo with Dual Ichors, you're at 12 by 220. You do get the multiplicative damage bonus, the 25% per combo multiplier bonus on Slash Dash. If you don't have a melee weapon equipped and you don't have Exalted Blade out, you basically only get up to whatever your initial combo is. So this helps give you, in this scenario, it gives you that 160% increased crit chance to try to get you to 100% crit when you're Slash Dashing. Because the difference between you not critting and critting when you're running this with a Slash Dash setup with running like Archon Shards and all of that is massive. So when you don't crit, you see it, and then when you crit, you're like, oh boy, that's a lot of damage. There's some solutions around companions as well, but that's the reason why Sacrificial Steel and then also Sacrificial Pressure are on here. The thing that's left out of this is attack speed, because when you're using Exalted Blade in this setup, you're using it mostly around like damage attenuated targets, like demo units, some bosses. That's where this Exalted Blade setup shines. But you're primarily using this as a sort of a stat stick for Slash Dash. And that's where running these mods and Condition Overload. Condition Overload, you want to run this if you're running Furious Javelin. It's as simple as that. Furious Javelin scales this like it double dips in some weird way. I don't get into the super heavy math for it, but it's noticeable. When you actually test it, practically testing it, this is noticeable. So that's why we're running Sacrificial Steel Pressure and Condition Overload. The downside of this is that if you've already removed both your Umbra Formula from Exalted Blade, like let's say most people that are going to be running Umbra, you actually need this on here in order to run. So you notice the capacity remaining. You need at least one Umbra Forma on Exalted Blade to run this, which I don't have on Umbra, ironically, and so Umbra doesn't run that. If you are running Umbra and you don't have that, you've removed those polarities, then just throw in Gladiator Might instead. And it kind of accomplishes the same task. Like you're getting 40% crit strike or crit chance from this, so you're getting close to that 275%. It gets you to 80-some% crit chance on slash dash, which is good enough. I wish it was higher. I wish it was over 100, but there's just no room in the build to do that. So that's the solution around that. Like you lose some base damage, but in a little bit of crit chance, but you don't have to burn an Umbra Forma. Ideally, you just kept these polarities, but it is what it is if you did. On Umbra, same thing. Obviously, Warrior's Rest, this is so important that you have to run it. Otherwise, you're constantly breaking your build and decasting Nourish. If there's a possibility where you don't run this, one trick that I've noticed that you could do is, let's say if you are switching between Prime Sure-Footed, you can just swap the polarities. Just have like at least one Omni on them, and then you can just swap these polarities if you aren't using Augment. Since you're more likely using at least one Augment on this build, I wouldn't recommend having two polarities for that reason, but I digress. So that's a clever option that you can get in order to be able to mods, including with Warrior's Rest. But if you're running primaries and secondaries, because that's probably the reason you're running this build, then running Unaru and popping in and out of Operator once every 40 seconds with that little trick I've demonstrated a few times where you just pop an Operator and then quick melee and it almost immediately gets you back into your Warframe, then you're running Dexterity Arcanes, you're able to maintain combo. Also, the simple fact that Dual Ichor has an 8 combo duration and also has probably one of the best abilities to regenerate its combo possible, because this procs off the clouds if you're running Toxin and Magnetic. So you could pretty much heavy attack and immediately have back to 12 by 220 just because of the way this works and interacts with the clouds. Going back to the one I have min-max because of the unfortunate nature of Umbral Formas on Exalted Blade for it. We'll get into the companion setup. Two important things to note here. So similar to the exact build I've had before, but these two mods have been the flex. Notice how I have an Affliction and an Influence variation of this. I have that also on the claws for a reason I'll show. But Momentous Bond, so with Impetus, this does matter, and this is noticeable. Like when you're playing a solo mission, I noticed 2 extra stacks coming just from this. Which 2 stacks those are, I don't know, probably cold if I had to guess. But this is noticeable. And then Duplex Bond, because Nourish, and because you want those extra clones out there in order to help proc status effects, this is really good. How this scales on higher missions, it probably scales well at proccing unique status effects, but probably not as good as getting actual kills. Tandem Bond does help dramatically increase your companion's damage to where I wouldn't be surprised if in this setup at level cap the companion's getting a lot of kills just in proccing, dropping those energy orbs, all that good stuff. So this is that slight variation on that, and I'll show when I show the Chromatic influence build, demonstrate that. And so example here, I have heat and electric. This is noticeable in proccing Arcane Stretch. So whenever your companion's painting, jumping between target to target, painting them with electricity, you do notice it proccing Archon Stretch when let's say when you're running this Afflictions build, you slash dash the target, or let's say you have Exalted Blade out and you throw the heavy attack wave, which then flings the target. You do notice this proccing quite often. So this is worth it. If you need heat, which would be the other variation of this, then technically your amp has heat, but heat is such a common element given by other like subsumes and by other Warframes, that I'm not too worried about it, especially when you're at high level and people are running heat on their primaries or whatever. And you could technically get heat from your primary or secondary. Uh, I show this in the other build. If you wanted the like easiest way to maximize your stacks, you just run encumber like this. So this, you paint the target, it stacks like 10 status effects. You slash dash it once, and then boom, it's if the if the target didn't die before you get to do it, this is very effective at that. But it's an option. I don't run them. Run what you like. That's just something to consider of the elemental types of your weapons to maximize how often you're proccing Impetus from Affliction. So that's the gas affliction build. Getting into why I chose gas, the way gas scales with affliction is really powerful. Uh, I'd recommend reading the wiki on the explanation for the way affliction scales with this. But from my understanding, because of the way that gas scales off of base damage, and the base damage of this being really high, and then it stacking, refreshing based on that base damage when it gets refreshed by affliction, it's just really good overall. The ticks of gas when you do connect and it does knock them down hit in the millions, which really milks those damage numbers up and overkilling literally everything around you. I have absolute confidence that this will do plenty of damage in any content ever, because it almost looks like you're running a slam build. When you look at the damage meters, you just overkill everything by a mile in comparison to influence, which really does poor damage. Single target affliction really shines when you're in AoE. So in comparison to my other builds that I've run, like let's say Arcane Fallout running radiation and electric on Exalted Blade, I found myself preferring this because I run more hybrid setup when I'm playing Excalibur melee only, which is most of the time. The the nature of it is, if you're running something like Arcane Fallout, if you're not running Exalted Blade, you don't get enough stacks to reliably proc this. And so, but if you are running nothing but Exalted Blade, you're not using an equipped melee, I would still recommend running this Universal Fallout setup. The only downside of this is that you kind of need energy to generate energy, and you could have it as a variation. You could have a separate loadout that has this variation for it. Uh, but I've sort of stuck to just running Arcane Energize because I have a proclivity to want to use dual Ichors, and when you're running dual Ichors, you just simply don't proc Arcane Fallout like you do when you have Exalted Blade drawn. So this is like the more versatile setup if you want to run anything other than Exalted Blade. And the only variation between this and Fallout build is, instead of running Fallout, you run Energize, and then on Exalted Blade, you run Voltaic Strike instead. Even on this build, I'm running Reflex because because of the fact, like, if you're running Arcane Fallout, I wouldn't really bother with this. This is mostly for slash dash, like I mentioned before, to give you that initial combo and therefore stacks of Blood Rush, Reaping Wounds, so that you can try to maximize the effectiveness of slash dash when Exalted Blade is holstered, when you're using anything other than Exalted Blade. So that's the purpose behind this. If you don't want to run that, you just don't care for it, then electric mod and get the same combo, like a slightly worse heavy attack efficiency. This slight heavy attack efficiency is really nice. I would recommend running this over the 90% mod just to get that heavy attack efficiency. So you could always just swap that in if you really want. You don't want to run reflex, but I highly recommend running this still. If you want to see my Arcane Fallout version of this, I have a whole video on that, showing that. And then on the companion side for this, these are flexible, but because we're running relatively low strength and high efficiency, or normal efficiency, let's just say, because we're not running Blind Rage on this, then this is really good at just maintaining energy economy. The fact that your companion doesn't actually have to kill anything means you don't need like duplex bond on this. I think is a waste of a slot, because you're not consuming a lot of energy, unlike the Nourish setup. So you're not spawning a lot of these clones, and then they're probably not getting kills anyways. And so having this as a condition of them just assisting and then dropping health orbs that you're still maintaining the ability to proc into energy orbs through this. I think that's where that shines. And Sharpened Claws, I think this is a bit sleeper of a mod. I think this helps a lot against demolition targets and some of the really heavy attenuated targets that have armor. Because it is once you see them get stripped and you hit them, especially with how low damage influence is in comparison, this is really powerful. So this would be flexible though. If there's a other mod that you really like, maybe you like running Astral Bond, sure, or even Seismic, but I wouldn't recommend this. This is where you get to the problem of being too efficient. But it's a flexible slot. I think Sharpening Claws works really well. Vicious Bond does work too, and technically because you could like Radio Javelin, and that Radio Javelin will spread because it's an ability. This is an option, but I don't think it's as convenient Sharpening Claws. And then for the Claw build, it's just the same thing except heat, because heat's going to scale just overall better. One single heat stack reduces armor by 50%. This is just better. There's no reason to, with your Exalted Blade being electric only, there's no reason to run electric just even to proc Archon Stretch. Because when you're slash dashing, you're procking Archon Stretch anyways. If Exalted Blade's not drawn, you'll actually get that energy regeneration. I wouldn't worry about running electric on. So that's so those are the builds, and I think this one's been widely demonstrated. Chromatic influence. I think it's been. If I haven't gone over this already, I forget if I have. Chromatic Blade is just unnecessary on this. It's a waste of a slot, so that's why we don't run it. This build does a really good job at proving how unnecessary Chromatic Blade and melee influence is. Not to say they're bad. They're clearly not bad. It would be ridiculous to say that combination is bad. There's a reason why I have a whole other build for it, a whole separate build for it. But this comes so close, in a different way that I think I've enjoyed this a lot more than running influence. Maybe if you've gotten bored of running influence, this I think is a nice breath of fresh air, using a lot of clever interactions with the way Slash Dash and Exalted Blade work and Impetus. That it's a lot of fun. So we'll get into some gameplay. I'll do my normal test mission that I use as sort of a control for all of this. I'll show Dual Ichor, and then eventually when I get 250 kills, I'll show Exalted Blade so that you can see that. Very important, if you're running this build, immediately use Nourish before you try to use anything else. Otherwise, you're not gonna have enough energy to proc Nourish and start that regeneration.
Get some rest. You must be chin strapped.
So I'll show here, I'm already at 3 stacks. The other reason to not run Blast, and once I get enough energy, I'll just demonstrate this. So when you slam with Exalted Blade, it does proc Blast, and that Blast does count on Impetus stacks. So notice here I'm already at 8. That's my companion really helping me out. See if we get another one from this. There's 9. So yeah, I was missing Blast. I will say I do miss Wrathful Advance because I use it heavily for mobility as well. But I've gotten used to it. It took a couple hours for me to get used to that because I'm so used to using Affliction to move laterally, or not Affliction, Wrathful Advance to move laterally. So Smita, one of the other advantages of Smita is the shield, energy, and crit chance. And because we're not running Wrathful Advance, that 200% when it procs, it's powerful. You see it. You feel it. So the max stacks on Furious Javelin do go up. So for a while I thought they were capped at about 1900, but that's not the case. The max stacks do cap based on strength. So I've gone over 2000% on Furious Javelin stacks with this really high energy build, or really high strength build. When you're in, let's say you're in Circuit and you get that nice armor provides strength up to 500%, you definitely notice it. You notice the percent going way into the stratosphere for it. If we can look at some of the procs, some of the quantities on the procs, anything's not getting one-shotted. So like right there, 20 million off of a non-crit from that. The other advantage of Blast versus like Toxin, let's say you weren't running dual Ichors where you have base Toxin and you're running like Xoris with Gas Electric. You could technically get rid of the heat mod and then run just Toxin so that you could proc the 2 stacks. It's an entirely viable thing, but I feel like where this build really shines is maximizing dual Ichor and maximizing the way those clouds work. So we're at 250. We've got 9 stacks. I'll show dual Ichor doing its magic. So just looking into the distance here. We'll use this room because this room does a pretty good job at this once we get enough enemies. And we don't have that decay. Okay. So without a bunch of stacks. Rock a bunch here. You see over in the distance there, like they're not supposed to crit, but they do crit. They do crit quite often. You can see that just based on the damage type. But you'll get these little pockets across the map of clouds where they'll just self-sustain. It's really bad on tech rot missions because the tech rot enemies are so squishy that like let's say during the Coda confrontation, if you've seen my other video of me doing Coda confrontation and getting 2,000 kills, it's because it's like a self-sustaining spawn killer for the enemies. And this happens in regular missions, like see over there. It's just self-sustaining clouds. Because our efficiency is not into the ground, we can actually use shields and casting for that to not die from an acolyte. But you see over there, like I haven't been over there in a good solid minute, and it's just a self-sustaining set of clouds. And as long as you maintain Furious Javelin stacks, you will see those numbers stay high. When your Furious Javelin stacks decay, they will go down, and you will see the number values like no longer be self-sustaining. And this is against Grineer that aren't being armor stripped. So this, we're not talking about tech rot enemies. It's even worse in 1999, as I mentioned. So this is Grineer, like fully armored Grineer, that aren't getting armor stripped from anything, since we're only applying Toxin, Magnetic, and Viral to them. Let's see down there, it's hitting like 150 just random crits. Why they crit, I don't know. It's really bad in the tech rot zone where you have this like arbitrary extra crit value. What that's from, I don't know, but I'll show Exalted Blade here and show you how powerful this is. Just overriding the heck out of all my stacks. So just slash dashing. Let's see this enemy right here. So once we get combo up, the nature of it. So when I was using dual Ichors right there, that 12x220 combo for it does multiplicatively scale slash dash damage. But when you override it like this with Exalted Blade, you're not relying on reflex in order to get max stacks of your crit. So you will at least yellow crit with this setup. Mathematically, it's like 120% crit or so with full stacks right now. See that number in time? Just like I was demonstrating or discussing as well, when you Tennokai heavy attack, you do cause fling, and you do hit in the millions. This overall does so much more damage with Exalted Blade. Like you don't get the AoE of the AoE or the CC of Influence, but when you do use Exalted Blade as sort of like an attenuation target killer, it is so much more powerful than Influence that it solves a problem with dual Ichor that you would otherwise have with like demolition units and such. So I really like it. This is what I've been playing primarily. I've been testing it in all various types of content where you have highly attenuated targets, and it performs better than pretty much anything else I've tried with how high the strength is, how high the overall damage is of Exalted Blade. Even with Afflictions not proccing on bosses and some of those sorts of units, you don't need it in order for you to just overkill the heck out of anything. The thing to note, when you have an overguarded target, you don't knock them down when they have that overguard. So, you won't see, like, against a really heavy overguarded target, if you slash dash them, you might have to slash dash them again, which is perfectly fine. You've got plenty of energy to do that. So if you connect, let's see if we can find one. See if we can find one alone. So half the time you can't even see the status proc on some of these because they just get overkilled by so much with this build. Hitting the millions on the status proc there. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if you've gotten bored of Affliction, you don't want to be running Exalted Blade on Excalibur, you want to actually use equipped melee or your equipped weapon and then just have something really good at slash dashing. Let's say if you didn't want to run dual Ichors, if you ran like Xoris, which has its infinite combo, you'll eventually just have combo, like max combo for your build. You can proc influence that way. That's probably the safest option if you're running Umbra with like Unaru and you just want to maintain max combo for slash dash damage. That would be the way to do it. Just run Xoris. You get some unique status types. Just run electric only for that if you really even want to. You can paint a bunch of targets with it, and then slash dash him, generate energy that way too. So there's a lot of options. You just might have to play with what element you're using on Exalted Blade, depending on what your equipped melee is. You could also just keep it gas the entire time and be perfectly fine. I think the little AoE from gas, like let's show that. I can. Everything's just dying. So when you kill stuff with gas with Exalted Blade, you do get these little gas clouds that will kill enemies. You'll get sort of collateral damage too when you slash dash a target. So you slash dash a target right there, and you'll see a little gas procs that'll kill targets if it procs a status effect for it. But it's not its primary intent. Let's extract from this.
We will all share in this bounty. Hold out as long as you can.
As you notice there, I got to 11 stacks on Impetus. Yeah, that's that's 66% strength just from that. We talk about what my resulting strength is. 402%. If you're running Umbra with the extra 15%, that's 417. So your nourish going to be pretty thick. Slash dash doesn't have its own base damage. It was one of the changes that they made. So just showing this real quick. So slash dash doesn't have base damage. It scales off of Exalted Blade. So whatever your Exalted Blade's resulting base damage is what slash dash gets, and it's noticeable when you have higher strength. Like if you're, like let's say I'm running this other build that I'll demonstrate. Let's say I'm running this other build that's only got 200% strength, and you get your good fissure reactant reward, double strength, so you're at 404%. It's very noticeable even just with slash dash, the difference between there. So that's part of the advantage of that other build too. It's just you're able to successfully get high strength, where you're not, because you don't have Exalted Blade out, you're not as worried about snapshotting in your full stacks of Molt Augmented, all that good stuff. So usually on this build, what I'll do is I'll proc, get that to max combo. So I get the bonus like attack or the bonus movement speed and such from it. The other thing to note about this, so the reason why I run electric damage at least at a minimum on Exalted Blade for this build is because your heavy attack doesn't apply Chromatic Blade's effect. It's this weird bug or an intentional feature. So if you wanted to be able to proc with the heavy attack influence with Exalted Blade, you need to mod on. You can't rely on Chromatic Blade exclusively as your elemental damage. You have to mod on some. And it scales really well too. Just adding the 60/60 mod for it, it scales really well. So that would be the reason to run that. There's some features in my Arcane Fallout build where I wasn't running any in native damage, so that when you heavy attacked, you were more likely to proc radiation stacks. But if you're curious about that, I would recommend watching that build guide. So Influence with Slash Dash procs really well when your Exalted Blade is out. But there's some really cringe features that you can, or things you can do with this if you really want. Let's say if we put away Exalted Blade, the disadvantage is you're far less likely to proc melee influence. And when you're far less likely to proc melee influence, you're far less likely to get the buff. The damage scaling just isn't as good. So like, sure, it does pretty decent against these enemies, but when you start scaling like right there, it didn't one-shot that enemy. And the resulting status damage really wasn't that great. Or like right there, where I don't have influence procced. Sometimes it can take a very long time for you to proc influence if you're just slash dashing. Like right here, I just procced it. You know, it took like 10 targets for me to proc it. But when it is procced, you do pretty well with it. The way around this, and this is, I haven't done a lot of testing with this, but let's say you're about to slash dash, you pull out Exalted Blade, and then you unequip it. And you use Exalted Blade when you're slash dashing to help proc influence. So it's like you're pulling it out, you proc influence with it, and then you decast it. Because you can decast Exalted Blade while you're slash dashing. So if I can not have targets die here. Right here, I just decasted it. But I already had influence procced. So, just as an example there. It's kind of cringe to do. Like, you're sitting there casting, decasting Exalted Blade constantly. And luckily, it doesn't override, like if you have a Xoris, it doesn't override that when you do it like it used to. That's something they fixed. So all of the pause combo counter no longer overrides when you pull out Exalted Blade, so you can just have a nice little snapshot at a full combo point in the background. So you can pull it out, proc influence with it, or get a few waves. But this is too sweaty for me to even want to do. It's not very fluid. So even on this build, I'm slash dashing a lot. Energy economy is very good. The advantage of running, of not running Blind Rage, which in a lot of general missions, even with that other build, in a lot of general missions, you can run into energy issues where you just don't get enough orbs to drop, and your energy economy, you just lose out on the ability to slash dash through like capture missions or exterminates and such. This build shines as sort of like a very versatile option that's maximizing and making effective how powerful influence is. It's just, it gets boring sometimes, and it's not best in some content. Like, if you're doing Disruption, this build sucks in Disruption. Put it simply. Even with Dual Lickers, it just sucks. And that's where that other build for something like Disruption is just far better. You pull out Exalted Blade, and you literally hit millions on the heavy attacks, just because the base damage is so high, especially if you get a fissure bonus and your strength is now 800%. The amount of extra bonus you get for Exalted Blade is just huge. Like usually when I'm running that Affliction gas build on a Disruption mission, I have Exalted Blade drawn the whole time, because Dual Licker kind of sucks at it. It sucks at killing demolition units, so I just pull out Exalted Blade for it. It's probably the one scenario where I'm regularly using Exalted Blade on that build. So you can see, like, this does not bad at proccing clouds, but the clouds don't hit nearly as hard in this setup as they do with influence. And it's something that I test in Simulacrum when I do my little self-sustaining Simulacrum thing of heavy units. So this can't do that. This simply can't do it. You need Nourish in order to really do that effectively.
If you wouldn't mind, pick us up a coffee while you're
So it doesn't do too bad against these. If I'm not, the problem is when you're using slash dash in this sort of setup with influence, it just doesn't scale well high. Like that proc rate or the amount of ticks that it's doing to the target just isn't high enough. Like right here, like I can't even. We'll full send this right here and see. Like you can't even kill this Eximus unit. Like I slash dashed that 3 times with full ramp and it didn't die. Doesn't do too bad against the lesser enemies, but once you start ramping the level up, it's just not very good. Hitting in the thousands for the status procs versus hitting in the millions. So this guy right here. So he's not taking too bad, like 300k, but that's not in comparison to 20 million. Like there's bursts where this does pretty good damage, but it's not nearly as consistent as Affliction when it comes to slash dashing. The second proc got it to like 600k or so. Like not at all trying to downplay how powerful this setup is, even only at 200% strength. I think the fact that you can run the strength this low is a testament to how powerful influence is. I have my own opinions about that, but I won't talk about that in the video. Influence, very powerful. Let's say for some reason they decide to nerf influence and it nukes this build into the ground. Very easily start using that Affliction build, and I think you're within 90% effectiveness because of how high the strength you can get it to and the extra utility of Nourish. Oh, I think that's a good demonstration of this and some of the features of it. The variation between these two. Pretty much, I switch between these two occasionally, but I've been probably 80% of my gameplay has been just playing Affliction, Gas, just because it's so nice. It's nice seeing the big numbers. I have been playing a lot more of Umbra. The only downside to Umbra right now is I kind of screwed myself and I took a an invigoration that gives me parkour velocity, and this like ruins my fluidity of the build. So I've been playing him a lot. I've been playing him pretty much exclusively for the last like week or so, in order to really understand the limitations, especially not running Unaru and running like Nariman and seeing, okay, well, what things actually knock you down? Being someone that's had Prime Shred-Footed for a very long time at like, I think I'm coming up on 2,400 login days. Not running Prime Shred-Footed for a very long time. Seeing the limitations of it and seeing where you do actually get knocked down, it really doesn't happen that often. So if you wanted to if you really wanted to run Nariman, I don't think it's necessary if you're running this Affliction setup. Yeah, if you're running this Affliction setup, I don't think you really need Nariman in order to maintain combo because of how well Duelicker sustains its own combo and how easy it is for you to build it. I really don't find it necessary. I also wanted to make sure I tested this fully, getting the crit chance higher. Well, you know, why not? We'll do a video of this. Oh, I don't think I have the right pet on. I don't think I switched to my Smita setup for this. I was testing to see if Adarza's Cat's Eye is worth it. I don't think it is overall. I think Charm is just such a powerful... Charm is just so powerful that it's not worth losing its advantages. Make sure I'm running the right setup for this too. I'm not going to show the influence. I actually don't have Umbra set up for influence. That's something that I made sure I set up on Prime since I'm primarily playing Prime. But just to demonstrate this again, because why not? I'm just doing 5 or hitting my operator transfer and then quick melee. That's all I'm doing right here. So maintaining the poise buff or whatever it's called is super easy, barely an inconvenience. And a lot of times, as you probably noticed, I'm watching my health kind of, since you have enough health and armor, it's Steel Path to like take health damage without just immediately flopping. And so I'm constantly transferring in and out just to get the healing from Arcane. I think it's Magus Elevate, one that gives you 300 health when you transfer back in. The demonstration there, you just have a cloud, set of clouds just over there, just murdering stuff. Like, look at that. Like, I remember the time before they nerfed the clouds for being able to proc influence, and how ridiculous that was. I took to the level crap a few times, and this is probably just as ridiculous when you have the right conditions for it, like there. And this is so much more powerful without, or with Nourish. Like, Nourish kind of makes this as effective as it is right here.
I've delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
See, I haven't even been paying attention to how many stacks I have, and I'm at 8. So we're almost, I think it's like 390 some percent strength right now at 8 stacks. Energy economy's been good outside of that first like minute. Let's milk that up to 960. Enough enemies show up.
Down you go.
Tenno, prepare for life support.
I guess one thing to notice, I don't like slash dash in large chains all the time. I'll break it with a block neutral. Just wait, Dual Liquor's the Carving Mantis stance. Really love that stance. Definitely my favorite stance in the game. Just works really well for that. You get good range on it. I'll slash dash, block neutral to break it. With running Nourish on this build, you can do this without running out of energy. In some of the other build variations, it's quite possible to run out of energy doing that with how much you're casting. It also helps generate shields and maintain that. One thing to note too with Tandem Bond, when you heavy attack in order to proc the extra damage for your companion, that doesn't proc unless, like that buff doesn't proc unless you actually hit a target with a heavy attack. So it's one of those, it's something to consider when you're using Tennokai, making sure that you're actually hitting targets. Or if you're proccing the Incarnate effect. It's like if you can give it a half a second delay to get to the target, it's probably worth it. Like I'm kind of not even going hard here, and That's how much kills we have. Because Duelikers Cloud's doing its thing over in Narnia here. The funniest part is when you look across the map, like you're sort of speeding through a random capture mission, and then you just happen to turn around and start seeing a bunch of kills across the map. happens quite often.
Now available.
Parkour velocity messing with me a little bit.
Here we go.
There you go. 560,000.
The raid is off to a successful start.
Yeah.
When you are ready, go to extraction.
Dual liquors with Vortex. Yeah, to reiterate in this setup, I'm not using influence at all, and at 5 minutes I'm at 860 kills. Not even like really trying that hard. We're sitting here watching numbers half the time. And just to demonstrate with this too, like I just slam heavy attacked. We'll demonstrate this. Like look at my combo now. I'm gonna do it again. Like look at my combo. Because the clouds actually proc it. So like the clouds, when they're taking toxin damage from the clouds are proccing that combo evolution. It's one of the other major reasons why this Vortex setup is so good. Because unless you're running Saren and you have that added toxin damage, you're not getting the feature of the clouds being able to proc its own combo. And so this is where, and then because of the way combo works on Exalted Blade, like the main reason for Nariman, like the main advantage of Nariman is being able to use Exalted Blade and maintain its combo high. But like the fact you're using Reflex, you're at least getting 5x. If you're actively hitting a target, it's sort of a self-correcting issue. The low attack speed makes it not as easy to build combo on Exalted Blade without running Nariman, or to maintain your combo. But the tandem bond kind of helps with that, since your companion's giving you random spurts of getting 6 combo. So yeah, I think it's a non-issue. If I were being honest about it, I run Nariman because I just tend to like it. I think the extra damage from it works really well too. Like I think it scales pretty well against Void Cascade and such, but I don't think the disadvantages of running Naru on Umbra are significant enough to like try to run base Excalibur just to solve around the issue of the augment. Zillus augment. I'll see this till another acolyte shows up. Notice too, has no problems killing acolytes with how high the base damage is. We're at 9 stacks. 9 stacks is pretty good. And if I were to guess, stack we're lacking is probably last.
If you wouldn't mind, pick us up a coffee while you're at
Maybe not. Sometimes it might take a bit for you to proc a blast with slamming with how low the status chance is of in this setup with how low your status chance is. It's only like 30% or so.
a valuable lesson.
24%, I think it would. No, it's like 30 some percent because with Galvanized Elementalist, you. Yeah, 42% status chance on it. If you do run, if you do want to run like Toxin only on Exalted Blade, like let's say if you're running, I'll show this. Why not? for those sticking around this long, I'll show this. So if running something like Xoris, and the build I run for Xoris, I run gas on it, so then it has the innate electric, and then it's got gas on it. So then it's a little dubious to run gas only, and then because if you're not running Toxin Magnetic on dual liquors, you're not getting Toxin and Corrosive stacks. So then the solution around that, in my opinion, is you just go Toxin only. You don't get the AoE effect from gas, which is it's noticeable without that. But the single target damage of this, just absurd on different targets. So not as good for slash dashing, AoE, having gas sort of do its AoE thing. But you're able to get Toxin only there, and then therefore proc corrosive. But then on here you get gas and then the forced electric. Shows somewhere. Yeah, the forced electric from the explosion from volatile rebound. And also the advantage here is that you can get to max combo. You can get to max combo and then it can just stay that way. Infinite combo duration. So your slash dash will always have 12 by 220 when you have Xoris out and you don't combo by accident.
Music, and the enemy calls for a song. Roger.
Life support has been cut off. They're trying to choke you out. Hold on. I'm sending auxiliary life support.
This Xoris setup not as good without Wrathful Advance, I'll say that, but just to demonstrate. Already at 6 stacks, procking stretch like constantly, so I'm getting that passive energy regeneration. Since when you throw your Xoris and then you slash dash, you're sort of double dipping into 2 melee weapons attacking simultaneously. Sadly, you can't increase the bounce while being able to proc the guaranteed, like, from the explosion, since those mods are unique equipped. Like, you can't equip volatile rebound and also increase the amount of bounces. That'd be an interesting setup.
Give us a yell when you're ready.
But just as an example, I'm at 9 stacks. Stacks. What exactly those stacks are, I don't keep track of them really that well, so one of the harder ones to proc when using afflictions like this is Blast, just because of the fact that Blast has that short duration, the 1.5 seconds until it procs. So if your companion happens to apply Blast, you might not be able to slash dash it in time before it explodes. See. And to demonstrate, so I had max combo on my Xoris, and now I've got Exalted Blade out. So it looks like we did already proc Blast.
Evolutions and maybe some mother.
Life support
And we'll decast, and I'll look at that. Maintained our combo. This is another variation other than dual liquors. There's a lot of these that you could do. It's just the thing to consider is what the elemental type on Exalted Blade is. And does that... Like, you can have them run the same. Like, there's no real major reason. Because you think my companion, if I could have put Toxin on my companion instead of Electric, since because I'm running Xoris, I'm procking Influence with it. I'm procking Electric. So do I really need Electric on my Kavat in this scenario? No. That's where you could run Toxin, and then you could keep Gas on your Exalted Blade and not have to change that. And you'd get effectively the same effect of it. Like, you'd be able to get to pretty high stacks. But it's just something to consider. I think there's variety in that. Some of the nature of the interaction between Impetus and Affliction on Slash Dash is just, it's so much fun. It really is. It's such a cool little thing that's a lot more interesting than than Chromatic make influence go burr, which is what every other build in the game is. Just way too meta in my opinion. That's your pleasant reminder that that you need a proc poise. Considering we're anywhere from 1 to 2 less crit tiers lower, how much more damage Slash Dash does in this setup is just it's noticeable when you get to higher levels too. When you get to higher levels, this extra damage is, yeah, like right there. I'm actually able to one-shot X-Miss units through their Overguard Slash Dash without having Exalted Blade drawn or relying on sort of the quadratic effect of influence.
Off to a successful start. When you need it, the extraction is ready.
But even lower enemies, this guy, you can see when they have Overguard on, they don't take as much damage because they don't get the extra stacks from Affliction. It's Kitty. So you know, it's not as crazy as the numbers, but I wasn't really going crazy with it. Obviously, in a build using a glaive, when you forget to proc your Naru knockdown immunity, it's more noticeable. Versus the occasion where you go into one of those arson type Xmas units that do a really good job of knocking you down. The other thing to know, and I didn't even mention this, like Radio Javelin does a lot more damage when you're running Nourish because of the viral stacks, but then also, like here, I'm able to just sit here and spam this, and it's actually doing some damage. I'm actually killing stuff with just Radio Javelin. I go down. Alright, I think that's enough of that. Make sure I don't make the mistake again of having parkour velocity as a... 75% is just too much. I can deal with like 25%, but it's just annoying. Mistakes were made. So yeah, that's probably gonna be a long enough video to where anyone still watching at this point, well, there's all the data on the build, on I guess technically both variations and some of the sub variations within it. I think this is pretty much peak Excalibur variability right here between these two options that I show on Prime, between Affliction and Gas. Let me fix this before I forget. The simple fact that you don't have to change Archon Shards, that you don't have to change your emissive color even in order to run two completely different build variations that have completely different advantages to them. I think that's peak Excalibur for the moment. Until they make some sort of sweeping change. I'm hoping they make some sort of change to the way health works, which will just... This build is already very tanky, very reliable. The times you see me going down as Umbra are times where I'm not really paying that much attention to it. If they do make that change, I have a feeling health tanking with triple Umbral will be even better than it is already. It'll be even more capable, even simpler than what it is now. So that's the crux of the builds. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment. And thank you for watching.